Lego make lots of different themed sets, from classic sets, Creator 3-in-1, Lego Friends, Architecture, Technic, Speed Champions, then the licensed sets like, I don't know, Jurassic World, Avatar, Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Star Wars. But one theme they don't do is military. Or do they? Is there a secret military theme at Lego? I think there is. Now, firstly, there is a big demand for military-themed sets. If you Google Lego military, you'll find a lot of other companies making Lego-compatible military sets. Generally tanks and soldiers sort of thing, small play sets. Mainly seem to be featured around World War II, it seems, but general military. So there is a big demand for it, and Lego must know that. Now, Lego have some strong guidelines for things they don't do, like drinking in a modern setting, religion, politics. But with violence and war, they said this back in 2010, "We have a strict policy regarding military models, and therefore we do not produce tanks, helicopters, etc. While we always support the men and women who serve their country, we prefer to keep the play experiences we provide for children in the realm of fantasy." That's what they said, but it's not necessarily what they do. They've cancelled sets in the past, most notably the Osprey helicopter plane thing. Although they were selling it as a rescue vehicle, it is known as a military vehicle, and that was cancelled because there was a bit of backlash from some people saying Lego making a military helicopter plane thing. The plane itself, I think, looks pretty cool. Or is it a helicopter? I don't know. They fly over my house quite often, so I like to see them, and it was cancelled. But Lego knows the demand is there for a proper military vehicle. Now, they say it's all about fantasy versus modern-day realism. And you can see that fantasy in the Star Wars sets. There are plenty of tanks, guns, fighting vehicles. And the same they've had other series like your Pirates, Vikings. If you look at these themes, you'll see they're armed with a lot of axes, swords, cannons, which I suppose Lego would say that's historical. It's fantasy. But there's also a lot of guns. I mean, Star Wars have got all their guns, and Lego would probably say that's fantasy, science fiction. A lot of these are also realistic. There's revolvers and so on. Now, some of the sets are like the Pirates and Vikings and the Marvel. They display sort of fighting and violence, but in sort of either science fiction or your fantasy, historic setting. But some of them are a bit more realistic, specifically the Indiana Jones sets. Now, it depends how sort of modern Lego are thinking, but the Indiana Jones sets have Nazis in them. Although the Lego models don't have Nazi sort of insignia or symbols or anything. In the film, they're Nazis. So essentially, it's Nazis without any of the signs or symbology of them being Nazis. So that's World War II. So, I mean, that's not that far in the past, really. And a lot of these other third-party makers, that's what they're making. They're making essentially sort of World War II military. Now, what Lego also said is they do not produce tanks, helicopters, etc. Now, while they produce Star Wars tanks and fantasy tanks like that, they obviously don't produce any sort of real army tanks. But helicopters and fighter jets, they do make. I've got this other video where I show you how there are several Creator 3-in-1 sets where if you recolour them away from their sort of bright colours into sort of, greys and blacks, they are essentially fighter jets they're making. I think that's part of this hidden theme, that there are sort of fighter jets in official sets, but they're just brightly coloured and called something else like Sky Soarer or something. So that is there. And then in regard to helicopters, there are several sets like this one, which is a police rescue helicopter, which obviously looks exactly like a Chinook helicopter, famous for its army use. There's also this Technic set, the Airbus H175 rescue helicopter. It's a rescue helicopter and it looks like a rescue helicopter, but there's also a military version of this helicopter. So again, Lego saying they're, like with the Osprey, saying how they're doing a rescue helicopter. At the same time, it could easily be recoloured into a proper military helicopter. So there's several examples, I think, where you see Lego making a model as a a passenger plane or a rescue helicopter, rescue plane or whatever, but it could very easily be converted into a military vehicle. I mean, in the case of the planes, they look like specific fighter jets. It's not just a generic fighter jet shape. It looks like they've been inspired by real fighter jets and just recolored into bright colours. Now, when they say modern versus fantasy, there are a lot of other minifigures, such as these collectible minifigure series. There's the Nutcracker, the bearskin hat guard. And it's like redcoat soldiers from, what is it, like 150 years ago, 100 years ago now? What year are we in? But they're historic soldiers. So if you wanted to make an army of old-style military with cannons and these guys, you can. Lego do that. It's just Lego seem to say they're not going to make modern-day soldiers. But they do make modern-day soldiers. But they just don't call them modern-day soldiers. I mean, if you look at all these Star Wars characters, these are all Star Wars minifigures from Endor, Return of the Jedi. Now, if you didn't know they were Star Wars and maybe took off their helmets and put on a traditional sort of standard helmet Lego piece, these are essentially army uniforms. It's sort of the green and brown grey camouflage. Belts are bullet belts, bandoliers are they called? Chewbacca wears one. Anyway, for all intents and purposes, these are soldiers. If you had a bunch of these lined up, they are soldiers. And if you look at the amount of guns that you can get from Lego, there's enough there to sort of stock a small army of minifigures quite easily. If you are willing to sort of change colours around and mix and match minifigures from various sets, or buy them all in Bricklink, it's quite easy to see there is sort of a secret military theme going on here. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it. I mean, you're not going to see sort of Ultimate Collector Series tank or, attack helicopter, although it would sell crazily well, I'm sure. But if you look around, a lot of these, there are other models which could easily be recoloured in readily available parts into military vehicles. So although Lego may be against sort of modern warfare, I think secretly they're aware of the demand and they're just putting it out just a bit sneakily. So if you're after building some fighter jets or a little army, Lego have got you covered. But I don't think we're ever going to see an official military theme.